It was the early days of the internet, a place where mystery and curiosity lived, side by side with confusion and fear, a place where things could exist in the shadows for years, before anyone dared to ask what they really meant. One of the most infamous of these rabbit holes began with a site called Simirote.com. In February of the year 2004, a user on an outdated message board spoke of a site that had disturbed them beyond reason. They said they had stumbled onto something deeply morbid and unsettling, something that had burned itself into their memory like a nightmare they could not wake from. The user asked the board a simple question. They asked, "Is this coffin webcam real?" They explained that they had visited a site called Zero.com, and what they found was a live webcam feed, supposedly broadcasting from the inside of a coffin. The body inside, they said, was that of a woman in her 40s who had died of natural causes. The post was frantic. The writer said something is not right here. They say it is real, but the wording is loose under the disclaimer, and it feels like there is more to the story than anyone wants to admit. "Please," they pleaded, "can someone tell me if this is a hoax?" Visiting the site today will not show you anything unusual. It is now nothing more than an Australian fashion and lifestyle blog, bright, harmless, and empty of anything that came before. But thanks to the Wayback Machine, people were able to look back in time and see what the site once was, and what they found was just as horrifying as the original poster had described. The logo of the site displayed its name stretched across an image of a coffin. The tagline written beneath it read, "Being dead and buried does not mean you cannot have friends over." Below this grim declaration was the so-called live view from inside the coffin. There were two camera feeds, one pointed at the face of the corpse, the other pointed at the feet. Streaming live video was almost impossible on the early internet, but these feeds refreshed periodically every few seconds with new images. The pictures were grainy, low resolution, almost impossible to make out, even by the standards of 2003. But just a month later, the site owner updated the feed, and the images became clearer. Now, viewers, I could see the supposed final resting place of a woman in a pale blue button-up shirt. The feed refreshed every 10 seconds, like a slow heartbeat, whispering reminders of death. But the true horror of the site was not the pictures, it was the description written beside them, a message from the site owner explaining in detail how this coffin cam had been set up. "Welcome to Simirote.com," they wrote. "This site is dedicated to all who have gone before us." The owner explained that 2 months earlier they had installed the world's first live coffin cameras into the interior of the casket. This was done after family and friends had seen the deceased for the last time. They described how they had then traveled more than 2,000 miles to bring the casket to its final resting place somewhere undisclosed. They spoke of a small ceremony of the grave being sealed, of the camera tests that were carried out before the burial. They described lowering the coffin into the earth just after lunch on April 15th of 2003. They ended this description by urging readers to contact them if they wanted a coffin cam for their own loved ones. The entire site seemed to be an advertisement for this twisted service, an invitation for people to watch the decay of their friends and family after death. And yet, despite the grotesque nature of it, people were drawn to the site. It spread across early forums and was even mentioned on mainstream television shows like the British program Quite Interesting. People flocked to the coffin cam out of fear, curiosity, and horror. But quickly the question arose, was any of it real? The images did not change. The body never decomposed, not in months, not in years, and eventually clever users discovered the truth. The live camera was nothing more than a looping GIF, a simple, still image that shifted in and out of focus to imitate a live feed. It was all a hoax. But why? Why would anyone create such a site? The answer may have been money. The site displayed advertisements often for adult content, and investigators eventually traced its registration back to a business in West Hollywood, California. The coffin cam, it seemed, was nothing more than bait for traffic, a way to funnel the morbid curiosity of the world into advertising revenue. Still, the question of who the people in the images were remains unanswered. No record of them has ever been found. Perhaps they were friends of the creator, perhaps hired models, or perhaps something far darker. The site remained online until 2013, before it was finally shut down and sold to new owners. But the true identity of the creator remains hidden even now. Some said the owner fabricated stories about the police seizing their equipment as a way to keep the illusion alive. Others claimed it was an elaborate art project, while some believe it was nothing more than exploitation of death for profit, whatever. It was, the site left its stain on the early internet, a rabbit hole that swallowed the curious and left them staring into a coffin that would never close. And then there was Mortis.com. In 2010, a user on 4chan stumbled upon the site. While randomly typing addresses into their browser, Mortis.com appeared as a black screen with only a login window at its center. No explanation, no graphics, no context. The word mortis itself, meaning of death in Latin, only deepened the mystery. Without a password, there was no way inside, so the user turned to the internet asking others to investigate. What followed was a decade-long obsession. Countless threads, posts, and theories all circling around that empty login screen. But Mortis.com was old, far older than it first appeared. Records showed it had been registered in 1997 by a man named Thomas Ling. Beneath his name were 24 other websites, each stranger than the last. One was Cthulhu.net, a black page with the phrase, "dead but dreaming" written across it. Some claim to see a version with a lone chess piece, but no proof remains. Another site, called Excursio.com, contained a hidden page, quilts.html, showing photos of quilting projects, strange and seemingly harmless, yet oddly connected to the rest of the web offsites. While some of Thomas Ling's domains seemed empty, others contained fragments of something larger and buried within the code of Mortis.com. Investigators uncovered evidence of massive encrypted data stores, terabytes of files far larger than anything reasonable for the time. Some files were as large as 39 gigabytes when the average hard drive was a fraction of that size. Speculation exploded. Was Mortis.com hiding illegal material? Was it connected to government agencies? Was it a secret archive of something too dangerous to reveal? Thomas himself allegedly told one investigator to stop digging. He claimed the files were only wedding photos and videos, but no one believed that explanation, not when the scale of data was so vast. A more grounded theory emerged. Perhaps Mortis was a private media server, a place where Thomas stored pirated movies, music, and software. The discovery of a file titled Drive Crazy 3DB D25 Part 2 seemed to confirm this, as it matched the size and naming style of a Blu-ray rip of the Nicolas Cage film Drive Angry 3D. This would mean Mortis was never a sinister plot, only a secret stash of pirated media. Yet the sheer number of empty domains Thomas registered, and the eerie names attached to them, left people uneasy. His quilting pages, his dentist job board, his family domains, all painted a picture of an ordinary man with an extraordinary trail of mystery left behind. But the internet had already chosen. Mortis.com was not ordinary. It was an enigma, a door with no key, a rabbit hole that countless people descended into only to emerge with more questions than answers. And then came the name Slave Master. In the year 2000, a chain message began to circulate across AOL Instant Messenger. It warned, if a man named Slave Master contacts you, do not answer. He has killed 56 women. This is no joke. Send to everyone you know. At first, it sounded like another internet hoax, another chain letter meant to frighten users. But this one was real. Slave Master was the username of John Edward Robinson, known now as the first serial killer to use the internet to lure victims. He used chat rooms, message boards, and private conversations to find women and draw them into his web. His crimes stretched back to the 1980s, but in the digital age, his reach widened. He promised jobs, he promised love, he promised family and travel and escape, but instead, delivered death. His victims ranged from a mother and her disabled daughter to young women searching for opportunity. He manipulated them into coming to Kansas City, then made them vanish, their remains later found in barrels hidden on his property. The chain message was not fiction. It was a desperate attempt to warn others before more women disappeared, and though John Edward Robinson was eventually caught, the shadow of Slave Master remains a haunting reminder of the dangers of blind trust on the internet. The rabbit hole of Slave Master is not one of mystery but one of horror, one that leaves no doubt about the evil that can hide behind a simple username. And then finally there was the mystery of Moravian Parallax Denigrate. In 1996, thousands of posts flooded Usenet, the precursor to modern forums. At first they appeared like spam, but closer inspection showed them to be something far stranger: paragraphs of nonsense, strings of words placed together with no meaning, as if written by a broken machine. Years later, the connection was made between these posts and the name Susan Lindau, a journalist accused of espionage. The theory was that the posts were coded transmissions messages hidden inside gibberish. But over time, that theory collapsed. There was no evidence of encryption, and the email addresses tied to the posts were spoofed. The name Moravian came only from a single surviving subject line, but it became attached to the entire event. Internet users believed the posts were the work of a Moravian text generator. But even that theory failed, for the gibberish was too raw, too chaotic, not the structured randomness such generators produced. The most likely explanation is also the simplest: that it was spam, designed to overwhelm Christian news groups. The randomness meant to bypass spam filters, but the possibility of something more sinister still lingers. Was it a failed experiment in artificial intelligence? Was it an attempt at coded communication? Was it nothing but a cruel joke? No one knows, and perhaps no one ever will. But like Simiro.com, like Mortis.com, like Slave Master, the posts of Moravian Parallax Denigrate remain etched into the memory of the internet, like shadows burned into film. Strange, unexplained, and deeply unsettling. Because in the early days of the internet, the line between reality and illusion was thin. It was a time when hoaxes could masquerade as truth, when killers could hide behind usernames, when spam could whisper like secret codes, and when every link, every site, every post could open the door to a rabbit hole you might never escape.